Welcome back to Hello Nigeria. Now, our first guest is here with us in the studio. We're going to look at, building intimacy in relationships and in marriages. Now, this woman is a relationship expert, and she'll be here to help us navigate through these waters. Seeing as Esther and I are no experts in this regard, we decided to bring someone who is grounded in this. She's a relationship and marriage counselor, a sex therapist, and a family life coach who is passionate about helping couples live a fulfilling and enriching intimate life. As a certified sex therapist and licensed marriage family counselor, she supports and helps people who experience all sorts of discomfort and issues during intimacy. Our guest today is Olatoun Ayoola. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
All right, so this is a very interesting one. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'm wishing we even delayed this talk till February 14th for all the couples, to have this conversation. And when I say couples, please, I mean husband and wife. Any other thing, I don't understand. All right, that's a conversation for another day. But, let's look at intimacy is a major part of marriage. It's something that helps to build the bond in a marriage. But what are some of the factors that hinder intimacy in a marriage?
Okay, so the number one factor is lack of communication. Because when you don't know what to do, or you know what to do and you're not communicating it, then there's a problem. So the number one problem you find in marriages or relationships is communication. Most of the people that come to me for counseling talk about how they're not talking to their spouse, XYZ, and it leads to problems in the relationship or marriage.
Okay. So when you say communication, can you give example of how it can actually, how this communication can happen? Because I know some people would say, yes, they love words of affirmation and also discussing how they can get intimate as a couple, while some others believe that their love language can be displayed in other forms. So when you say communication, how exactly can it be done?
Okay, so the thing is that different forms of communications. Of course, there is non-verbal, there's verbal, and there are different love languages. So the first thing you need to do is to make sure you know what your spouse's love language is. And then when you know that, you should be able to communicate with your spouse in that direct language. There is the affection, there is the gift of time, there is giving of gifts. There's so much. So you need to find out which one works for your spouse and then communicate to him or her, via that channel.
Speaking of communication, how far back should you go to when communicating to your spouse about your past history? So we know what people talk about. They say, things you've done in the past, things are passed away. When you meet your husband or your wife, don't tell them the things you've done in the past. Just start a fresh slate. But some other people believe that for you to be able to forge ahead, you need to look behind and let the person know everything you've done. So how much, from your perspective and with your experience as a trained counselor in this regard, do you think we should tell it all, in a relationship?
Okay, so this is it. In a relationship, in my experience, it's been that it's best you keep it on a need-to-know basis, really. You need to remember that I'm telling my spouse this for what reason. Everything has to have a reason. So don't just go about telling him or her everything if there's no reason. That sometimes you want to gist in court, but there's sometimes when it's very unnecessary. So just keep at the back of your mind that it has to be on a need-to-know basis.
Okay, on a need-to-know basis.
Yes.
It's not, so you don't just feel like, for some of us, I don't want to say some of us, for some people that want to just pour their heart out, you might need to gauge that situation because the other person might not be able to handle the information that you're giving to them.
And there should be boundaries every time. There should be boundaries in everything you do. Your relationship, your marriage, even in your work life, you have boundaries, right?
True.
Yeah, so there should be boundaries.
Let's talk about these boundaries. I want to talk about boundaries with regards to cheating. Some people say that cheating is not cheating until there's been physical intimacy between you and another person who's not your partner. So what would you consider cheating? Okay,
so having worked with a lot of couples, I've been able to see that cheating is basically like when you have to start hiding your phone or that conversation from your spouse.
Preach.
You are on the path of cheating.
Are you kidding me? So it's not until it gets physical?
No. When you're already hiding your phone, you're going outside to receive that call, you deleted that WhatsApp message. Remember that time you did? Yeah.
Or you cleared your Instagram DM.
Yes, and then it looks like nothing is happening. Yes, because you're building up. You've not started anything yet, or you've not done anything yet, but you're in the process. So yes.
So how do you now handle it when your partner is you didn't have that before. You had smooth flow of communication. You both had each other's passwords. There was nothing to hide. And all of a sudden, one person is now starting to hide their phone, sneaking out to receive calls, saying, why you invading my privacy? How would you advise someone to handle that?
Okay, that's where communication comes in place. Because you've had a type of communication before now. So if something changes, obviously, to be obvious to you and the other person. So you need to talk about it now. That's the time to talk about it. Don't wait and watch until like 6 months, 1 year. At that time, nip it in the bud if you know you're interested in that relationship or marriage. I'm not talking about nagging. No, communication is not nagging. Oh, why did you blah, blah, blah. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying communicate, like talk. Communication is talking to someone, the other person is listening effectively and then, helping you get better. So basically, communicate in the beginning, not when it has really gone to the extreme.
Okay, so speaking still on intimacy, now, I'm about to shake your table, but it's nice. There's always been that thing of sex being a paramount need in a relationship, even before it gets to marriage. Should that be considered so?
Okay. Are you talking about marriage, relationships that
Yes.
are not yet, people that are not yet married? Okay, in this instance, first of all, in my work that I do as a sex therapist and a counselor, I do not judge you. And everybody comes from different moral backgrounds and perspectives and traditions and culture. What is obtainable here in Nigeria is, may not be obtainable in the US. So it depends on your culture and your tradition. And anyhow you feel or you think your orientation, you're welcome. You're allowed to have your own opinion. If it works for you, then it's perfect.
Okay. Let's talk about basically how to handle issues when the flame goes cold. Now, we find that in some marriages, in a lot of marriages, after a point, the law of diminishing returns starts to set in, such that the person is no longer as excited as they used to be by this partner of theirs. So what advice would you give to a couple who find that the flame is ready, it's dying, and they need to rekindle their intimacy life?
Okay, so the first thing is, you need to first of all decide that you want to do something about it. Until you decide that you want to do something about it, nothing will happen. You just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then you see that the spark, the flame is gone. It means that you need to probably take a step back and then address the issue. What happens is most people decide to just wing it. You see, have people coming for counseling and just like, I've been married for 10 years, but I don't feel anything, but I'm just, I like her, I love her, or she's the mother of my children or something, and they just want to wing it. You can't wing it in marriage. Marriage is hard work. Yes, you have to put in the work. So if you at the point where things are just on a level, you have to do something extra. You can't keep doing the same thing you've been doing over the years and expect to get a different result.
But is it possible to have a healthy marriage where both of you have a good friendship, everything is working well, the bills are being paid by both parties, every party does what they need to do in the marriage, but there is no physical intimacy?
Okay, so that would be just cohabiting. You could as well be my sister or my brother, because intimacy is very important in a marriage. The number one reason it's important is because that's the only thing you share with your spouse that you do not share with any other person. Because you could share every other thing, you could share work, you could share a car, everything with other people, but intimacy is the only thing that bonds you and binds you together. And it's very important because, I don't know, if you're married, you'd notice that when you have amazing intimacy with your spouse, you see that you fight less. You're less cranky, even in your relationship with your spouse. So there's a way intimacy helps you to get better in other aspects of your life and even in your relationship and your marriage. So,
okay, so what happens in the case here? Yesterday, we talked about female genital mutilation. And I remember a certain lady calling on a radio show yesterday also, saying that because she had experienced that, she wasn't really into it as a woman. And just the only saving grace she has is she has an understanding man. In a case where a woman already has such issues, and by the way, there are also women who don't have the FGM issue, but they just don't like sex. So what do you do about such a spouse?
The first thing is you need to get help, yes. Agree that you need help, yes. And it's okay. It's okay for you to have a problem. It's okay to have a problem, and it's okay to find, a solution to your intimate life. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's okay.
So it's, first of all, you have to admit that you have a problem.
Yes.
And then be willing to seek help.
Yes.
Okay.
How important is it, for one to go seek counseling? How do you convince your partner that you need to have counseling? Because there are people who know that their intimacy is zero, their relationship is zero, but they're just being neighbors, cohabiting. But one of them knows that he or she needs to convince the other party that they need to get counseling. How do you convince your partner to go with you for counseling? And why is counseling really important?
Okay, so you can influence someone else to do something else, technically. So it's very hard to convince your partner to do what he or she doesn't want to do. So the best thing is to help him or her see the benefits, basically. It's not about going for counseling or not. Help me see what I will gain from counseling. So before you help me see what I will gain from counseling, you have to know what you'll gain from counseling. If you go for counseling, it helps you to give you a whole new, fresh perspective, because you guys have been on it for like maybe years and you have your own perspective. It's very different when you have somebody else that is certified, that has been doing this for years with a lot of experience, that can help you put things in perspective and also see things in a different light. Sometimes things are not as bad as you think it is when you're looking at it as a couple, like husband and wife. Then you go outside, you see a couple, you see a therapist or a counselor, and you see that, oh, my marriage is not really so bad. Like, I just need to do X, Y, Z, and in a matter of months or something, it will get better. So, yeah.
And I know that they say that men and women speak different languages when it comes to love and intimacy. So what are some of the tips you would give to men and to women, couples who want to spice things up, with a physical intimacy? What are some of the tips you'd give to them? I hear that they speak different languages. So speak the language of the men and speak the language of the women. Okay,
so the first thing is listen effectively. So imagine if I'm speaking English and you're speaking French. To hear me, above all the noise, you have to listen effectively. Most of the times in relationships and marriage, my clients, when they come for counseling, you see that they're not listening to help each other, they're listening to reply. So first of all, learn to listen effectively. Not to really even reply or even help your spouse, just listen and be there. You understand? That's the first step to, speaking the same language. Then the second thing you need to do is to make sure that as couples, you're committed to your relationship, you're committed to your marriage, because it's hard work. I say this every time because if I want to have a perfect beach body, I will go to the gym. I will sweat. Yes. If you want to have money, you probably will do X, Y, Z. There's a process. So in marriage, if you want to have an amazing relationship, you want to spice up your relationship, your intimate life, put on the work. Put on the work. Put in the time, the energy, the resources. Yes. If you have to spend money to see a counselor, yes, please do that. If you have to spend money to buy books, videos, just put on the work. And you will see the results like in 100 folds. Yes.
Okay. It's like we have a call coming in before we go. A call from Michael calling from Lagos. Hello, Michael. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening.
Thank you for calling.
Good evening.
All right. Please, you have a question or a contribution?
Yeah, I would like to know where I can get your guest for a one-on-one counseling.
Okay, all right. So you want to have a one-on-one with our guest. We'll be reading out her social media handles before the end of the show, so please keep watching, all right? We'll be reading out her contact. It's been such a delight to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. There's so many things, when it comes to intimacy and physical life. So intimacy and love, But what are some of the greatest inhibitions? What are some of the things that limit perfect intimacy between couples?
Number one, our culture. Culture, traditions, sometimes religion. We have to do a whole resetting, basically, of what you've known to be true, because you've seen that is not working for you. So the best thing you should do is put that down, what's not working for you, and learn something else that would work for you. At least give it a chance. It may or it may not, but you know that what you've been doing before now has not been working for you. So...
Okay. So, you mentioned culture and you mentioned religion.
Yeah.
And we know that we're a very prim and proper group of people.
Yes,
we're very inhibited and we're not very open to conversations about intimacy. Matter of fact, we're only now starting to campaign for sex education for young girls and young boys because we're starting to see the high rate of sexual molestation because these kids do not know exactly what this is about. I'll come back to my question, but we have a call from Kola calling from Lagos. Hello, Kola. Good evening. Thanks for calling.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for calling. Please, you have a question or a contribution?
Yeah, I think I have a question.
Okay, Bola, go ahead.
Okay, the first question is this. Your person is asking the question, in what ways can you keep intimacy in a marriage? Exactly.
Sorry, did you say in what ways can we keep intimacy in marriage exciting?
Yeah, in what ways can you keep intimacy in a marriage? Like you mentioned it, are you going to be far apart from your partner or whatever it is? Then I think number two, she was saying that
it's a bit, you're sounding a bit muffled, Bola. You're sounding muffled. Your first question was, in what way can you, did you say kill or keep intimacy?
Keep intimacy in a marriage.
Okay, all right, great. We already said something about that, but we'll touch it again.
That's number two. I wanted to also ask, a need-to-know basis likely could be maybe keeping information, and the person involved might feel that is little secret, and it begins to breed distrust.
Okay.
So I don't know, what do you say about that? Because the moment I find out, I might not be trusting anymore going forward. So
you are more of a tell-it-all person.
Key. What do you say about that? Keeping information might not be totally really the thing. Because the marriage is a relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Bola. So for you, are more of a tell-it-all. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thanks so much.
Bola.
So I think Bola is more of a tell-it-all person. Don't hide anything from me. Put all your cards on the table. I want to know where you've been, who you've been with, who you talk to, who you hug. I need to know everything so nothing springs out of the dark as a surprise. So let's make reference to that. He says, you know, don't you think that keeping information and only telling on a need-to-know basis might also lead to some sort of destruction at the end of the day?
Okay, so the first thing I said at that time was, why do you need to tell this person X, Y, Z? For instance, you've been in a relationship, now you're married, and you need to tell your spouse that you probably had 1 or 2, maybe abortions or something like that before you met them. Yes, that person has to know that. That's the need-to-know basis. But why do you have to tell your spouse that, oh, I've been with 4 or 5 women before you, or like the numbers? What would you do to your relationship or marriage? How would it help you to have a better marriage or a better life?
That they need to know.
I
want to know, it'll help me to be able to trust you.
Yes, if the person would go ahead to ask that question, yes, you could then supply them with the answers. But most of the times, they don't even ask. You know, you say them because you feel like you should say it. So if you feel you should say it, then you shouldn't say it, because this is how it works. The first thing I said when I spoke about on the need-to-know basis is what you want to achieve. So first of all, ask yourself, what do I want to achieve by telling my spouse this?
All right. So we're running out of time. Bola had also asked the question, how can we spice things up, you know, spice your intimacy life?
Okay, so
in a marriage, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, in a marriage. Okay, so the first thing you need to do, I can't stop emphasizing on communication. Yes, and then another thing you can do apart from communication is making sure that you spend time with your spouse. Some people will tell you that I live in a different country or state or something with my spouse. You need to make time for your spouse. Even if you live in Abuja and you're in Lagos, you live in Abuja, your spouse is here in Lagos, you need to make out time to spend time with your spouse, because that's the only way you can bond as at that time.
Do you get judged for being a sex therapist?
Okay, it's getting better now.
It's getting better?
Yes, it's getting better now.
But we are seeing the work that you're doing. Well done, and thank you so much for joining us. How can people follow you on social media? Okay, so on social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Olatoun.Ayoola. And then you could also follow at Our Intimate Secrets, because I'm a sex therapist for Our Intimate Secrets. All right. And then... All right, thank you so much, Olatoun Ayoola. That's how you can get to connect to her on social media.
To enjoy more of these our Ogbonge videos when you just watch, press this button to subscribe on top of our YouTube page. You go love her.